Okay, so in this tutorial we're going to go through how to make a dice, or a die, singular version of dice, in Fusion 360. So this is what the final version will look like. And this is for practice with some of the tools we use for building the Lego brick, just so we get a little more comfortable using them. So offset, dimension, how to place points, lines, things of that nature. Alright, so to get started, I'm going to create a new file. As always, when I create a new file, I want to start by saving. So I will name this a 3D printed die. Press save. Okay, and to start, we need to make the base of our die, the actual solid cube. And a pretty standard size for dice. Okay, if this is what we're looking at. Standard dice sizes. Okay, they range from 5 millimeters to 50. We're going to build one kind of in the middle, a 16 millimeter dice. Okay, so first I want to make sure I'm in millimeters, so I'm going to go over to Document Settings, my units. Right now I'm in inches, so I'm going to click on Change Active Units and change this to millimeters. Okay, and we're doing that because the dice is pretty small, and also when we 3D print, it's easier for the file to be read if we're in millimeters. Okay, now that I got my settings right, I'm going to come up here to create a new sketch. Select any of these three work planes. I'll start from right here. Alright, I need to create a rectangle, so I use a keyboard shortcut R, or go up to Sketch, Rectangle, 2-point rectangle. Place my first point, the first corner in the very center of my origin, and then drag out. Without clicking, I want to enter my 2 dimensions. If I click too soon, so if I drag out and I click, it automatically locks in my rectangle, and that's not what I want. I want to be able to set my dimensions. So again, with the rectangle tool, I click for the first point and then drag out. And I want this to be 16. I'll hit Tab to get between these two windows, and the second dimension to be 16 as well. Hit Enter a few times, and you see we're locked in to our 16 millimeter rectangle. All right, I'll go ahead and stop sketch, and then I want to extrude this sketch. So I'll get the Extrude tool from up here, and then it asks me to select a profile. Obviously I want to select this profile, so I'm going to click on my sketch, change my view here so you can see it extruding. Okay, and this is a 16 millimeter cube, so just like my side lengths were 16 millimeters, I want the extrusion to be 16 millimeters as well. So I can enter in 16 in this little window, or I can go over here in distance, I can enter in 16 here, and these are the same thing. Okay, so I want it to be 16 millimeters, press OK, and you can see we already have the nice form of our dice, the cube. Okay, so now we got to figure out where to put the dots to finish our die out. For the rest of this recording, I'm going to be referencing an image that shows, see if I can go back here, that shows where the different numbers go on my dice, on my die. So I'm going to start with the number 1, 1 dot, and that needs to be centered in a face. So if I go over here, I'm going to start by creating a sketch. And now instead of selecting one of these 3 original work planes, I'm just going to select one of the faces of my dice, sorry. Okay, so I'll select this plane, and you see it moves our objects. Now we're looking straight on. I want to draw 2 construction lines. Okay, so I can use the keyboard shortcut L, or go up to Sketch, Line, or press this icon up here, Line. Okay, and that gives me a line. Now if I regularly click with this line, you see it's blue and solid. Okay, those are regular lines. I don't want a regular line because it's not actually going to come into my final shape. I'm just using it as a reference. So again, with my line, I can now go over here to the sketch palette and toggle construction. See how that's highlighted blue? That means any line I draw is now a construction line. Okay, it works the same with rectangles or circles. Anytime you have that construction toggled, it's going to give you a dotted line, a construction line, which basically means you're not going to be using those for anything other than a reference. Okay, so I want to draw 2 construction lines that go from corner to corner on this face. And the reason I'm doing that is because now where they intersect right here, and if you look very carefully, there's a tiny little blue triangle. The point of their intersection is the very middle of that face. Okay, so now that I have those drawn, I'm going to go to Sketch, Point. I don't want it to be a construction point, I want it to be a regular point. So I'm going to get rid of construction. So again, sketch, point, and I want to put a point right in the center of this face. And then I can stop sketch, and if we go back to the home, okay, I now have the location for where that dot is going to be. Okay, what I'm going to do now is figure out those same locations on the other 5 faces of my die. Okay, starting with face number 2. So if I go back to my reference image, face number 2 is immediately to the left of face number 1. So over here, when I create sketch for face 2, I want to select the face immediately next to the one where I put a center dot. So this will be face 2. Now to get these 2 dots in the right place, I'm going to start again with a construction line. So I press L for line, and then toggle the construction. You could also go in and out of construction by pressing X. So if I press X, I'm on a construction line. If I press X again, it's no longer a construction line. Press X, it's a construction line. Press X again, no longer a construction line. Okay, so using that, my 2 keyboard shortcuts, L for line, X to make it a construction line. I'm going to do a diagonal from the top right to the bottom left. Okay, and my 2 points are going to be on this line. So I'll go to sketch, point, press X so it's not a construction, and I'll place 1 dot and 2 dots. The placement right now doesn't matter because I'm going to use the dimension tool to put them exactly where I need them to be. So, to use the dimension tool, I can go to sketch, sketch dimension, or I can just press the keyboard shortcut D for dimension. And you can tell I have the dimension tool because you can see these 2 little parallel lines with an arrow between them. All right. Now to use this tool, the way you click is very important. I need 3 clicks. The first click is on the first edge of my dimension. The second click will be on the second edge of my dimension. And the third click places where the dimension is going to be visible. Okay, so say I want to dimension this dot to be 4 millimeters away from this edge. I'm going to click once on the dot. That's my first edge. Click once on the edge I want to distance it from. So I want to distance from this edge. And now you can see I can drag and place where this dimension will be visible. I like it to be visible outside of this shape, so I'm going to click again to place it, and then enter in my value of 4 millimeters. And now this dot is locked into place. Okay, that's different from this dot. See, if we click and drag this dot, it can move because we haven't set a dimension. This dot, we set a dimension, so I can click, but when I drag, it stays where it is. It's locked into place by this dimension. So I want to use my dimension tool. Again, 1 click here, 1 click on the left edge, place my dimension, and then enter in a value, 4 millimeters. So now these 2 dots are locked into place, and I can stop my sketch. All right, all done with face number 2. I'll go back to my guide, and for face number 3, that should be immediately under face number 1. Okay, so if I go back to Fusion, I'm going to hold Shift and then click on the middle scroll bar so that I can orbit around my piece. Right, so this is orbiting. So I can see the face I want to draw on. All right, and now I want to create a new sketch on this face, and this is going to be for the number 3. Okay, again, we're going to start with a line, a construction line, from the top right to the bottom left. Okay, and I want to place 3 points on this line. First 2 points kind of up here in the corners, right? So 1 point here, 1 point in the bottom corner. Now for this middle point, I can actually get it right where I need by just dragging along the line until I see that triangle snap into place and place it. And now I know I'm right in the middle of that face. Okay? For these other 2, we're going to have to dimension them. So D for my dimension tool, click on my point, click on the edge, place my dimension. This should be 4 millimeters. I still have the dimension tool ready, so I'm just going to dimension my second point. Click on the point, click on the edge, click to place my dimension, and enter 4 millimeters. And now you can see we have 3 dots nicely spaced. Okay, if I try to dimension something already placed, so say I dimension this point to this point, and I want that to be 8, it'll have this pop-up window saying adding this dimension will over-constrain the sketch. All that means is that I already have this in a correct place, right? Because I snapped it onto this line, it already knows where it needs to be. So we're good with that. I'll press stop sketch, and now we can see we have phase 1, 2, and 3 done very nicely. All right, time for phase 4, which needs to be opposite of phase 3. So I'll go back to Fusion. I will orbit around using Shift and the middle cursor and create a new sketch on phase 4. Okay, right now I can see the sketch I did on phase 3 just because it's visible, right? It's seeing through my piece. So I can go down to the sketches on the left-hand side, and I can turn off the visibility of sketches that I've already done. That way I'm just looking at a blank face. Okay, I don't want to get too confused with those lines, so that's what I'm going to do. All right, phase 4, I'm going to do an offset command. Okay, so I'll press O for offset, or I can go up to sketch and then go down to offset. Again, if I look in this drop-down menu, it tells me the keyboard shortcut is O. I like to use the keyboard shortcuts because time is of the essence. All right, and now it's asking me to select a curve I want to offset. I'm going to select the outer edge of my rectangle and then drag it to the inside. Okay, the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to place points outside my shape. I want them to be inside. Okay, and the offset value that I want here is going to be, let's say about 4 millimeters. I think 3 will work well. Okay, so 3 millimeters for my offset. Press enter, and now I have a perfect square inside of this die face. Okay, I want to place my 4 points on the corners of this square. So go to sketch, point, and place 4 points on these 4 corners. Now you'll notice I left this as a regular rectangle. You could turn it into a construction rectangle. It doesn't really matter because again we're just using it for reference. These points and their location is what really matters. Okay, stop sketch, and I am now done with face number 4. Okay, I can't see those other sketches because again I turned off my sketches by pressing the light bulbs. If I turn the visibility back on, then we can see I finished face 1, 2, 3, and 4 very easily. All right, let's go ahead and get started with face number 5. For my reference, face 5 should be to the right of face number 1. So this is face 1, so this should be face 5. Create a sketch onto face 5. Again, turn off the visibility of my other sketches so I don't get confused. And I'm going to start with an offset again. So I want to offset this rectangle by 3 millimeters, just like I did for face 4. Okay. And now I'm going to add a construction line from corner to corner. All right, and I can use that construction line to place a point right in the middle. Okay, so now if I go to sketch, point, I can do my points on 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, and drag along this line until I see that triangle. Now I know I'm in the middle, and I can place my 5th point. Press escape, stop sketch. All right, and we're all done with face number 5. Okay, you can see it's coming together nicely. So I'll finish my face. There should be only one left. That's face 6. Okay, so create a sketch, face 6. Now this time, I'm going to, again, turn off these sketches so I'm not getting confused. Okay, I'm just turning them on so you can see them. But I don't want to sketch a point and just place it anywhere. I'm going to use the dimension tool to lock it in so that it is 4 millimeters away from the top, 2, 3 clicks, and 4 millimeters away from the right. Okay, so now this is locked into place. I'm going to use a good rectangular pattern tool. So if I go to sketch, rectangular pattern. All right, first thing it asks me is what do I want to pattern? I want to pattern this dot. Okay, in this first direction, so I'll drag out this first direction. I want it to be spaced by 8 millimeters, and I want 2 of them. Okay, I'm not going to press enter yet. If I press enter, it'll only have 2 dots. I need 6. So first, I'm going to drag this arrow down, and I want these to be spaced by -8 and 3 of them. Okay, now when I press enter, I get 6 perfectly placed dots, just like I need. I'll stop sketch, return to my home view, turn on my sketches. Okay, so now we can see we have face 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 4. We have all the faces of our die ready to go. Okay, if I turn off those sketches haven't actually changed my object. right? I placed points where I want to put holes, but until I put those holes, this object is not looking like a die yet, right? It's just a little cube. Okay, so I'll turn the visibility of my sketches back on. All right, now to create a hole, I can go to Create, Hole, and a pop-up window shows up with a bunch of different options here. Okay, first is placement. I can select what face I want to do, what sketch points, all right, and I can change what type of hole I'm going to be using. All right, so the way I like to do this is choosing a face. Oh, my apologies. Okay, so again, H for hole or create hole. Where's hole? Here it is. All right, and now I can click on the dots that I made, and it'll put a hole right where those dots are. Now there's two dimensions for our hole that matter. The first dimension is the depth, okay? The depth. And we want the depth to be 0.5 millimeters. All right, the second dimension is the diameter of the hole, or how big it is. Okay, so you see if I drag this arrow, it can make my holes bigger or smaller. I want our holes to be 2 millimeters in diameter. So I'm going to enter 2 and press enter. And then if we look in our browser, this should be here. Okay, and I turn off my sketches. Now that actually drilled holes in those two places. Okay. So I'll turn my sketches back on, and I'll finish drilling holes in all of the faces. You can only do one face at a time, so I'll do face 6 next. Again, I'm going to click all of these dots first. Double check that they have 2 millimeter diameter, 0.5 millimeters is the depth of cut, and press OK. And there it is, the holes on face 6. All right, so I'm going to finish doing holes on all 6 faces. So this is face 4. The settings have already locked in, so it's even easier now. Face 1, just one hole. Okay, face 3, do my 3 holes. All right, and again, I'm just using the keyboard shortcut H, and I'm orbiting around my piece by holding Shift and the middle button on my mouse cursor. Okay, so H for hole, click on my points. Those settings are already locked in, so it should automatically do them to 0.5 millimeter depth and 2 millimeters in diameter. And there I have it, all these holes. Okay, so this is looking more like a die. I don't like these sharp edges. I want these edges to be rounded or filleted. Okay, that's a safety concern. Right, also it's just easy to roll dice when they aren't at sharp edges like this. So I'm going to press the keyboard shortcut F for fillet, and then select all of these edges. So I want to select all edges around my cube. If I'm correct, there should be 12 edges. Okay, 4 on the bottom. So there's the 4 bottom edges, 4 on the top, and then 4 going up and down. Okay, once I select those edges, I want to fillet them by 1 millimeter. Press enter, and we have a nice finished die.